Hi, I'm Sharon Spangler. I'm here at Reno City Hall with Council Member Dave Aiazzi. A few months ago, we talked about the Northgate Golf Course and the conversion of that golf course to an open space park. So I thought it'd be a good idea to first start off by updating everyone. What's happening now with that?
Well, we had our final meeting at City Hall, so the City of Reno now officially owns it. So all that's gone into place. They're surveying the property now. That has to be done because it's sort of divided up into 3 or 4 different properties. And that really has a big effect on what can happen to them in the future.
What does that mean, they're dividing it up into different properties?
The people who decided to raise their own property tax to pay for some of it, they bought 100 acres with their tax money, and that can never be used for anything else. It's got to be open space. We got 400,000 from Washoe County. They're open space, so that chunk of property can only be used for open space. We got some from the Parks Fund to build parks in that northwest area, and that has to be used for a neighborhood park. And then the City of Reno got the rest of it, and that's we have more flexibility on that in the future about what to do.
What are you hoping is going to happen with it?
Well, I'm hoping that the people around there will take a long-term view of this, a lot like Rancho San Rafael, and have a Friends of Northgate or whatever they choose to call it, and start bringing things in slowly. I would like it to be personally a little more active use than Rancho, but it would be nice to have a dog park up there where people can take their dogs, but bicycling gets to the BMX part. A lot of bicycling and running and walking around, that kind of stuff.
Now, a number of residents agreed to a special assessment district, which means they're going to be paying a tax for this open space. How soon will they see that on their bills?
That will start next July 1st. That's when those things happen. We don't send out another bill. So that's when that's going to start appearing on their bill.
And then is the city going to pay to maintain it? How does that work?
Right now, what I promised everyone is there's not going to be any maintenance money right now. We're nowhere in a world of hurt. We didn't use any general fund money to purchase this, so it didn't take away from police or fire or anything else, street repair. It was all those park funds that I told you about that could only be used for parks. So once we have a plan and hopefully the economy starts turning around, we can start doing some things up there. I am looking at what the city has to do to legally lease out property now, because they keep changing that law in the legislature about can you lease out the clubhouse to someone. So if there's an active group in there, it would reduce the vandalism that goes on up there. And there's also some maintenance sheds up there that we might be able to lease out to someone.
Is this a pretty unique thing for a city to do? Is this the first time that the city has ever worked with residents like this to actually buy a piece of land and make it what they want to make it?
Well, maybe converting a golf course it might be fairly unique, but I'll remind people the City of Reno owns Sky Tavern Junior Ski Program, which we own a ski hill. And so we pay tax to help fund that. So we do that kind of stuff too.
Interesting. I think we're probably the only city in the country that has its own ski resort.
I believe we might be.
Moving on to another thing that's going on in your part of town, which is somewhat unique. A group of kids over the years, 10 years, and their friends and other people who are BMX enthusiasts built a sort of unauthorized BMX track up there in northwest Reno. What's happening with that?
Well, the BMX track is still there. We're looking to see what we can and can't do regarding that. I mean, we had some attorneys that just wanted us to tear it down the very next day. Yes. And I got a little upset about that. They just don't set policy, although they like to sometimes. So we're meeting with the groups. We met with the neighborhood advisory boards. They want us to see if we can keep that there. How do we do it to bring it in the fold, so to speak, to say the city could let this be an authorized park? One of the concerns is if it keeps growing, there's an area where it's a dam and it can't go in and hurt different parts of the floodplain, and that's a big problem up there. And right now it isn't, so one of the concerns is it keeps getting bigger. I thought the overreaction by some of the people at the city were a little, again from the attorney's office, was a little bit much, like the very next day, and we hadn't even done any research. I thought it sprang up over the summer, and people told me it's been there for 10 years. So I think we can relax a little bit and sort of think this through a little bit more and hopefully get some resolve to that. There might be a problem also with that because it's actually on 2 vacant lots up there. There might be something in the homeowners' CC&Rs that might regulate that. The attorneys are also looking into that because it's built on city property, but those lots are also part of the CC&Rs, and it becomes a very odd little program. But The same issue, I think we can put a BMX track up at Northgate also. That would be really a nice bigger one there. That would be one of the key uses, I think, for that area up there. And there's all sorts of things that have been flying around up there. We could put a farm up there and all that. But the BMX track is still there. I think it's, I applaud kids who go out in the open space and have fun. I mean, that's sort of what it's supposed to be for. So it doesn't bother me at all.
I wonder how it just grew like that. I mean, over 10 years, and we really didn't hear anything about it.
Yeah, that's sort of what does happen. I mean, when I grew up in Sparks, we were on the very edge of town, and across the street there was one house, and then there were fields forever. And you'd go out there and you'd build one jump, and then, well, I'm going to put another jump over here, and you'd go do another one, and it just starts. 10 years is a lot of time with a lot of kids with all that energy. You get 10-year-olds just like those monkeys on a typewriter. They'll build a BMX course.
That's why you want it. You want to go out there. Renew your childhood fun.
I'd like to harness that energy from those kids, and it solves a lot of problems. Just get that energy.
So for now, it looks like there'll be some sort of BMX park in that area.
I hope so. You know, it's only, I don't even know what elevates it up to, what's the legal definition of a BMX park?
Right.
I mean, that's a big, it's, what it is a bunch of bumps. That's what it is. It's not an official park. It's not anything. It's a man-made bump in open space. That's all it really is. So I'm not sure what elevates it to being called a BMX track or park or anything. It's not really open to the public. So again, I think it's a lot of stimulus there on the part of some adults who just say, we got no complaints from the citizens around there. Sometimes these things happen because the person who lives next door to it complains, or in the neighborhood they complain about the kids making noise or throwing rocks or something. That never happened in this case. It was just a city worker went up there and saw it one time and said, oh, look what's going on here. We didn't get one complaint from the people living around it.
Wow, that's surprising.
Yeah. Well, that's what you want kids to do in a neighborhood. That's why people move next to these kind of areas where there's that open space, so their kids can go play in the open space and have fun. In the Northwest, it's always been rather difficult looking about where motorized vehicles can or can't go, because a lot of the neighbors go up there and they say, we moved here so we can just drive out there on our motorcycles.
And there is a lot of area around there where people can go and,
right.
and really get out in the middle of nowhere really fast.
Yeah, the Forest Service really sort of demands that it be accessible to the public, which it should be. It's Forest Service land. And we went through 3 or 4 years navigating where you could access the public spaces up there. And again, there's some dams up there that are supposed to be in case of flash flood, so you got to worry about, that's another wholly separate issue than being on other land. And that's why we also have the Parks Department up there who looks at some parts, and Public Works looks at other parts. Public Works deals with the flooding zones and the dams and stuff, and Parks and Rec deals with just the open space.
Anything else going on in your neck of the woods?
Oh, there's a lot happening all the time. I'm really happy with our neighborhood advisory boards. They're always bringing stuff forward. It's really always busy, and it's very fun to be able to do that. And I'm glad that we kept the funding alive for the neighborhood advisory board, so that if they want to do some small things in their neighborhood, they still have the ability to do that. It might be replacing some playground equipment or fixing a stop sign or a lot of small things like that. I think that's very important to the people out there to keep their neighborhoods safe and clean.
For people who are watching that don't know what a neighborhood advisory board is, it's a volunteer group of people that get together, sort of like a little mini city council, and they address some planning issues. And the city allocates them grant funds, and they can use those grant funds for different projects. There are some stipulations on how they can spend the money, but the NABs have done some pretty cool things up in the Northwest.
Yeah, they've done some good things all over town. I mean, I go by on Arlington all the time. I see the Ward 1 funded that big sign there that tells what's going on in the city. I know that in the Southeast they funded stuff at Neal Road Park and Yory Park, and it's just, you go around and see the stuff that the people who, like you say, are volunteers, just say, this is what we want to do to live in our little neck of the woods here and be happy about it.
One of the projects that I thought was one of the best things that they did in the old part of the Northwest, over sort of near the university, is when they spent money to replace some of the sidewalks in some of those neighborhoods. I thought that was a really great project.
In fact, I think they put the first flashing crosswalk there on Sierra Street was part of that. And now it's grown into, you know, unfortunately that accident that happened with J.K. Metzger, but we already had plans in the works to replace a lot of those with flashing crosswalks and put more crosswalks in Sierra, and Virginia Street, that's going on up there, and the neighborhoods had a lot to do with where those would go and how those would be looked at.
That was part of a plan, a bike and pedestrian overall plan?
Correct. And RTC, it's an RTC, sort of State of Nevada, RTC City of Reno project all in one, because the city is going to be tearing up Virginia Street here this next summer to replace a sewer pipe up there, and then right after that RTC is going to come in and do the resurfacing, and then they're going to restripe it. So now's when you start looking at how that's going to be handled in the future, so that we've gotten away. I hope people have seen that, although you don't usually notice things that go right. It used to be around here, you'd replace a street and then Sierra Pacific would come dig it up. Well, that just doesn't happen anymore because we're a lot more coordinated in what we do.
Yeah, they did a great job over in that Oliver Montello area where they replaced the sewer and the streets in a coordinated effort, and saved a lot of money and time doing that, and the disruption for the residents in that area.
Well, I'll touch a little bit on that, the sewer, because I know that people are wondering why we had to raise the sewer rates again. And part of it was because of that. The street programs, we were going to be getting some streets repaired because we didn't have the money to fix the sewer lines underneath the streets. So RTC was spending their street repair money in Sparks and the unincorporated areas. So by helping us to fix the sewer lines quicker, we're also able to get the streets repaired quicker.
And that's huge. And some of those sewer lines were like 50, 60 years old.
There's a map we have that shows the 60-year-old lines, and I think there's some 80-year-olds. There's some they pulled out that are actually wooden still.
Oh my gosh.
When
it's
they
amazing
did, when
that
they,
they've worked this long.
When they retract, they found a lot of different kinds of lines, water lines and sewer lines. And we just have a lot out there that we've got to repair before they just start collapsing.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think I'm really pleased with what's happened with Northgate, and I hope that people start putting on their thinking caps and giving us ideas about what they'd like to do with Northgate.
So there'll be some sort of a committee formed, hopefully, so people can
if
get
people want
together.
to, right now I'm leaving that up to the Neighborhood Advisory Board. That's sort of their job too. And if there becomes enough interest in the park by itself as a standalone, I'll be happy to institute a different a group of residents. I talked to one woman who's very instrumental in getting it passed to do that. And one thing I said, she might want to have her own semi-informal group to come forward with things. That way they don't have to follow the open meeting law. You know, they can just come forward with, we live around here, here's what we'd like to see. If we set it up, it's got to be agendized, and you can't really talk to your neighbors about it, on Saturdays. so it's a little bit easier that way.
Well, I think that, congratulations. I think it's great to see a group of residents come together with an idea and make it happen, with your help and the help of the rest of the council. It
took 2.5 years. The council really helped, but it didn't use, again, no general fund money was used in doing this. We found it from our parks fund, and the county put in $400,000, and the residents paid for half of it themselves.
Great.
And the property owner, the people who owned it before, came down their price quite a ways. I mean, almost in half of what they originally wanted. I think it was $5.6 million originally, and it came down to around 2.4. So they helped out a tremendous amount also. Great. Thank you so much for being with us. And thank you all for joining us on this Council Connection.